call the September 18th, 2024 Board of Selectmen's meeting to order at 6:30. Mr. Pinio, do we have need for a non-public?
Madam Chairperson, we do under 91A, 3, Roman numeral 2, lowercase b, hiring, and lowercase c, reputation. I would also like to just state tonight that we've had a request that people speak directly into the microphones. We've been having a problem with people turning their heads and whatnot, and it makes it challenging for the recording secretary to be able to record the minutes. So please try to speak into the mic directly. Thank you.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the September 4th, 2024 regular minutes. Does anybody have any changes or corrections? It is my understanding that Paul is requesting that the email I read from Mary DeVries on September 4th be attached to the minutes. So I will amend it to include that. Is there anything else? Can I have a motion?
Move to approve the minutes of September 4th with the addition of the memo from Mary DeVries.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Brad and a second by Dave. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstention, I was absent.
And one abstention. Okay, next item on the agenda. The Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold the second of two public hearings pursuant to the provisions of RSA 53-C:3-a to consider the proposal from Breezeline, formerly known as Atlantic Broadband and Metrocast, Inc., for a new cable television franchise to be in effect upon signing. This is the second of two public hearings. We will not vote on this. We will vote on it at the next meeting. Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak to this public hearing?
Yes, did the selectmen have a chance to find out anything about the questions that I asked at the last meeting?
Mr. Bradley is on this evening. Last time you wanted to see if we could reduce the lengths regarding connection, which is currently at a density of 15 units per mile. And Mr. Bradley's here to speak on behalf of that. Mr. Bradley?
Yes, thank you. And I apologize, I was not able to hear at the last meeting when that was raised. The 15 humps per mile is as low as we can possibly go with funding it ourselves. There was a situation probably back in 2018, 2019, where the town received some funding from, I believe it was the state, and we worked in partnership to extend it to some other areas that previously did not meet our density requirement. And we certainly could take a look at something like that if the town would be interested in looking at that. I know that there's a lot of money flying around from the federal government that's being dispersed to the states and in turn sent out to different types of projects to expand broadband. So that's something that possibly could be explored if the town wished to do so. But as far as the density itself in the franchise agreement, 15 homes per mile is as low as we can possibly go economically.
Okay. Could you hear that? That 15 houses per mile is as low as they could go, and there may be possibly some kind of grants, but it doesn't affect this contract at this point. Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to speak to this public hearing? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. The board will vote on this at the next meeting.
Linda, I just had one thing I wanted to say.
Okay.
Suzanne, he did say that in 2018-19, the town of Wolfeboro did receive some funding that allowed for connections where the density wasn't 15 per mile. So it is something that we, maybe we can look at again to see if there are houses, if we can get some kind of state funding.
Any other comments from the board?
Linda?
Yep.
I was a part of that activity back in 2018, 2019. At the time, the State of New Hampshire Office of Strategic Initiatives received a grant from, I believe it was the United States Department of Agriculture, to rapidly deploy as much broadband as possible. Actually, we were just getting into the COVID situation, I think, is when this happened. We quickly went around and figured out that Warren Sands Road was in a bit of a ditch, so we were able to get some work done out there. We got work done in North Wolfeboro, Chicken Bickford Road. We couldn't get as far out as Cotton Mountain. We had a conversation with Atlantic Broadband about providing connectivity out to Browns Ridge Road. They were strident that that exceeded their density. They literally would have to run a wire out to the Rotary Circle in Ossipee, run it through Ossipee, and then do Browns Ridge Road, which gave us the opportunity to then introduce Spectrum Communications to the town. Spectrum stepped in and did it. So I don't know whether there's any money left. There is $96 million in the state coffers for broadband, and I don't know how that would work for us, but that's kind of a little bit of the background.
Selectmen, anybody else? All righty. We'll talk about it again next Selectmen's meeting.
Madam Chairperson, if
Yes?
I could, I just wanted to note as well, the last time Mr. Bradley was online with us, he was not able to connect, and we had some connectivity issues. I just wanted to make it clear that it was an in-house IT issue. It was not anything to do with the internet connection, and that problem has since been resolved.
Is anybody else have any comments? Hearing none,
Yes,
is it
Jen.
okay to move
And
on? All right.
Maybe I can just add, there was one other lady that had registered a complaint about an issue with the name on her bill, and I believe that has also been resolved.
Okay. Anything else? Hearing nothing else, I will try to start the next public hearing. I'd like to open up the public hearing. The Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing session pursuant to RSA 674:4054- government land use.
I'm Sarah Silk, Lakes Region Household Hazards Product Facility, and with me this evening is the chair of the joint board, Ryan Heath. And we have given you a packet. This is relative to the roof over our facility. The facility has existed since 2002, and we're not adding to the facility anything except a roof over the present fenced-in area. And you all have a summary of the many contacts and meetings that we have had with Board of Selectmen, site views, and I was at the planning board the 20th of August. You have pictures of the facility. We have trust documents here and a map, and Ryan will give you more information about that.
Good evening. Again, my name is Ryan Heath. I'm the town administrator in Alton and also the chair of the joint committee. Thank you again for having me tonight. I won't bore you with an entire repeat of the last presentation, but just some highlights for the hearing, and then obviously answer any questions that you may have. So in your packet, there are a couple of overall photographs of the site that you did view during the site walk. This packet of the truss design, this is the actual truss design before we gave sort of a facsimile earlier on in the presentation. These have been spec'd for this particular build. They did give an elevation photos on a likeness of how it will be laid out in the grid and what the gable ends will look like. There are two types of trusses, all spec'd out for snow loads and engineered out, calculated by the manufacturer. Also, that we included a current picture of the site plan that was done a while back, originally on the site and dated 10/18/02. We included that because, as we had stated before, this roof system has no walls. It's a timber frame system that's going to carry the trusses. The trusses are actually, the timber frame is actually going to replace the fence posts on the current chain link fence, and then we're going to reattach the chain link and the gates in their same exact location. So we are not expanding outside of the current concrete pad of the site. So the site plan still is accurate. So there's no intention of that. It's still a 612 pitch on those trusses. I know there was some discussion about that before, and just to reiterate during that discussion that the joint board is prepared, that if we do get heavy snow loads, that the maintenance will fall upon the board's decision to pay for and arrange for that. So that won't be an issue moving forward on one community or the other. And other than that, things are still pretty straightforward, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the public may have or the board.
Will you state for the audience the total cost of this? It was 60-some-odd thousand.
So the joint board had allotted or approved not to exceed $62,000. The current price that we got through the contract was $59,000. We went to 62 because we had that much allotted for this project, just in case there was some overages in one way or another. But we are still, we did, with the help of Town Manager Pinio, we were able to hammer out a contract with the contractor himself, a legal contract through legal's help, and everything is locked in at the $59,000. So.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Also, I think it was Paul O'Brien had asked a question about the date on a drawing at that time and whatnot. And with the help of Lee Ann Henderson, looking through files, the whole project, when it was initiated, had gone through the planning board, and the action for that was May 7th, 2002. I did know that it had, because at the time we had Wright Pierce that was taking the project on when it was built originally. I just wasn't sure of the exact date.
Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak to this public hearing? Hearing and seeing none. Board members? Brian?
Yeah, one question. Are there features in place for wind issues, just in case you get 60, 70, 80 mile an hour winds? Yeah. Will it be secure?
Yes, they'll be secured down with Simpson ties, the tops, and also the posts will be anchored in down at the bottom.
Any other board members have any questions or concerns? I'm assuming we need a motion, Jim, to approve the roof being placed on the hazardous waste building.
Yes, and authorize me to sign the building permit.
Okay. Somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah. I'll make the motion to approve this.
And to authorize Jim to sign, right?
And Jim signed the building permit.
And that's a second from you, Paul. So a motion by Dave, second by Paul. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You've got permission.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, just to let Mr. Pinio and the board know, we do have that building permit filled out, and I will be meeting with Jim probably in the next 2 days.
Thanks, Sarah.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All righty.
Nice to see you. Good.
Okay. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a temporary event public hearing, and I'll open up that public hearing. The Wolfeboro Board of Selectmen will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, September 8th, 2024, at 6:30 p.m. to consider a temporary event permit application from the Wolfeboro Energy Committee to consider the temporary event permit to host Drive Electric Week Car Show on September 28, 2024 at Forest Field Parking Lot from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Permit 2024-51. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to this temporary event permit?
Good evening. I am Jonathan Hewitt, resident of Wolfeboro, newly appointed alternate member on the Wolfeboro Energy Committee. And at our last meeting, we decided we'd like to host the event as just read off. It's basically going to be a car show for electric vehicles, and it would actually be part of a nationwide effort of events all around the country, all occurring during the same week. And the first one of these is called National Drive Electric Week. The first event occurred in 2011, and so we'd be one of the newest towns participating in this national effort. Goal is to educate any citizens in the area about electric vehicles. Just if they're curious, maybe they want to buy one and they don't want to have dealership pressure. So we have volunteers coming with their vehicles, have 7 vehicles lined up so far. My goal is to get up to possibly 12 because that's how many spots I'm requesting at Foss Field. And I did talk, or I have heard from Parks and Rec that the original requested location they're actually using during that time frame. So I have passed out the new location on the maps to the members. It's the area right in front of the playground. And I am available for any questions.
Okay, is there anybody in the public who'd like to give us input on this temporary event permit? Seeing and hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. Board members, anybody on the board have any comments, concerns?
Great idea.
We talked about that, I think, the last meeting. If not, can I have a motion?
Move to approve a temporary event permit for September 28th, 2024 from 10 to 2.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Paul, a second by Dave. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
I have to abstain because I'll be participating in the event.
I have 1 abstention and 4 in favor. Thank you.
Thanks.
I have a question to ask the board. Jim, did Amy give you any packets on a temporary event for Brewster?
No.
Did anybody get that information?
What was that?
A temporary event for Brewster Academy cross-country ski team?
No.
They did not make this agenda. The event would take place next Wednesday. There is no time for the board to hear the event at our next scheduled meeting. I thought the packets were going to be here tonight. So we have 2 choices. We can set another date, either later this week or the beginning of next week, to hold the public hearing on this cross-country team race. The application is in and is complete, or we can say no and they can cancel the meet. The problem with saying no is that it is the students who will lose an event. So I didn't know whether the board was willing to meet another day and hear this public hearing.
Madam Chairman?
Yep.
At least I didn't get anything, so you clearly have something. Can you give us a rundown of what they intend to do?
Yeah, they're going to use the Abenaki ski trails. Let me get this back up. And they provided us a map. It's, a cross-country ski race, and they run a circle in Abenaki. I have sign-offs. I don't have it from Public Works. That's the only one who has not signed off. There are no comments.
And I would just add that there was a change in staff at Brewster. That's how it ended up. There was a change in staff at Brewster. That's how it ended up coming to us late. So,
What's the date of the event?
It's Wednesday, September 25th.
Can I question maybe does Public Works need to weigh in on this? Is there a Public Works need for them to sign off?
It's part of our form.
I understand.
We've got Steve right here.
Let's put them on the spot.
So I think I missed it, and I'm trying to download it.
Okay.
I haven't read it, but I'm sure it's fine.
Okay.
So,
Is it in Sewell Woods?
No, it's in
in
Abenaki.
Abenaki.
It's on that,
That's up on
they'll
the-
make a loop.
Okay.
if it's on Abenaki, I have absolutely no issues with that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
It is
why.
at Abenaki. It's a loop that they run around the cross-country ski and bike trails.
Are the spray fields still operational?
Yes.
Does the course go near the spray fields?
From what I can see here, as best as I can
Want to set it
see.
over here and put it on the big screen?
It doesn't, I can't, it's not labeled, it is a map going around. It may, if that little blob up there is the, I don't know, I can't tell you. That's the easiest way I can answer that. It doesn't look, I'll pass this down.
Because they have done races, and I'm just asking, because they've done races in Sewell Woods before.
No, they're going to do another one in Sewell Woods, and I told him he better have his application in on time for that
Well,
one.
I don't even need to look at that. You can't tell anything from that.
So,
We could make it conditional upon the layout so they don't go near the spray fields at all. They could work with Parks and Rec to make sure that the trail they choose near there, that they're not in the vicinity of them.
I was able to download it, and I did sign off on it.
okay.
I'll second your motion, Brad.
Okay, so I have a motion by Brad and a second by Dave to approve the temporary event permit contingent upon approval of the trail by Park and Rec.
One comment, have we opened up a public hearing yet on this, or do you want to? Or
We didn't notice a public hearing.
Okay,
If
true.
you want me, I can.
No,
add. It's
good
up to the
point.
board. There's no notice.
That's a good point,
If we
yep.
did it for another day, we would notice it and have a
Yep.
public.
I have no problem doing it anytime Monday, just so that it's done correctly. I have no problem doing it anytime Monday. I will dump my schedule for it.
Bless your heart.
I guess I'm kind of with Brian. This is a temporary event. We have a public hearing. When we had the Purple Hearts, we came in a special day to do that, and I think that would make, I think you could all have the full application. Everybody signed up, we can get the path, and it would give the opportunity for anybody in the public. Nobody knows this is coming up
Right.
today, and so.
And then we can have a good map in place.
Have a good record.
So in that case, if Dave will withdraw his second, I'll withdraw my motion.
Okay, let's look at a time on Monday. When would we like to do this on Monday?
Anytime after 6 a.m. and anytime before midnight.
Well, thank you, Brian, that really
Well,
narrows it
that's a-
down
that's
for
a
me.
wide swath.
Do you want to have it at 6 o'clock on Monday night? Do you want to have it at 4 o'clock on Monday? You know, what works best for I'm free. Brian is saying he's free.
Madam Chairman, I won't be here.
Paul is not going to be here.
We have a Zoom meeting at 1 with hazardous,
Okay.
and then I have another meeting 3 to 5.
So we're looking at 6 probably would work best. Or do you want 5:30?
I mean,
I was
that could
hoping
do it
earlier.
when you want.
how about 6 o'clock on September 23rd? Does that work?
Yep. Okay.
Brad,
Yep.
okay? At 6 o'clock, and this is cross-country. Jim, will you have Amy notice that?
And we will get the maps produced.
All right, do we want a motion, or are we comfortable just moving it till that date?
That's
I think
fine,
it
just-
doesn't cause a motion. All right. I'm moving on. Thank you. I think that makes good sense.
Linda, were the alcohol permits tabled?
There were a number of items on this agenda that got removed. The deadline for having material for the packet is Wednesday at 4 p.m. I have talked with Amy, and I am going to come in on Thursdays and review the packet material, so we don't have to do an amended agenda. So that's the plan, but the public needs to know we're holding to that 4 p.m. deadline, because without that, we end up having only part of the information to us. Okay, next item on the agenda is the bulk vote. Weekly manifest of September 6 is $777,871.79. September 13 is $254,497.09. We have 2 property tax exemptions and credits. We have 1 property tax abatement, and we have 1 raffle. Can I have a motion?
I move we approve the bulk vote A through D.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Dave, a second by Brian. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All righty. We have no board appointments. The first item under new business is actual versus budget, August. Finance Director.
Good evening, Catherine Carpentier, Finance Director. I apologize, I was unable to be here last month, but tonight I am giving you the year-to-date results through August 31st, which is 8 months through the year, or 67%. The general fund is at 72% because we have some contracted encumbrances. Water fund is at 72% operating budget. Electric is at 70%. Sewer fund is at 89%, and the reason it's high is because of the wastewater treatment contract that has been signed for the full year. And Pop Whalen fund is at 87%. The revenues, general fund is at 55%. The reason that's a little low is because we haven't done the second tax bill yet. Water fund residential is at 48, electric is at 51, sewer is at 43, and Pop Whalen is at 62. Water, electric, and sewer are low because we're a month behind on the billing from the billing department because of a software conversion, but we hope to be caught up next month. What else do I need to say? July, because I was not here, I just want to make it known that the Friends of Pop Whalen finalized their donation. The only thing we're waiting for is a grant that's coming directly to us. But other than that, they have paid in full. Motor vehicle revenues are at 74%, so those are slightly higher than the 8-month average, which is great. Building permits are at 87%, which is great. And we've already booked the third quarter quarterly admin fees. I believe that is all the items I have to say, other than department heads have not made the town manager or I aware of any issues or concerns at this point, and we just hope for good weather.
Do you want to explain what we talked about in terms of Winnipesaukee Day and last night Wolfeboro?
Sure. So in the detail, charges were made to, in the economic development budget, under consulting, advertising, other services. At the recommendation of the Selectman Murray and myself, we decided to pull it out and put it in its own line. So there'll be, under the Economic Development Department, a line called Last Night Wolfeboro and Lake Winnie Day. Right now, if you looked at them, if I printed the report for you, which happened after this report, it would look like it has no budget. What we're doing is waiting for the donations to come in to offset the expenses, because it's not a budgeted item, it's an unplanned thing, but it will be covered by donations.
Thank you. It makes it a lot easier to see exactly what's happening. Is there any selectmen who have any questions or concerns? Paul?
I have a question for Jim. So we, and Casey as well, thank you for the report. So we create for the enterprise funds, we create a budget where revenues and costs are supposed to match up at the end of the year. That's how it's done, right? We don't create a budget that says we anticipate a loss or a gain. Revenues and costs have to equal. And I may be wrong, but we have two enterprise funds that are pretty close to being within 10% of missing their budget number or hitting their budget number, but yet they're behind in terms of making their revenue. So not for discussion tonight, but maybe at our next meeting when we talk about revenues, could I get some clarity as to what management actions get taken, what happens when we find out that an enterprise fund is going over budget? What do we do? And where do we do it? So that the public knows what's happening here. Just at that point, I think we need to have that conversation just so that we can all understand what happens. Okay?
Well, I guess since you brought it up, I'd like to mention it now. I mean, the budget, the only things management can do, and by management, the department heads, is to control the spending. That's one thing. The other thing they could do is increase the rates, but they can only do that in a future period. But some of the revenues don't come in because they could be one-time grants or donations or, other user fees will spike up. So, but what happens is that's why their own fund is because they can tap into their designated fund balance, which is funds from prior years. And then the next year, you would hope that you would adjust the rates and that it would be more break even.
So thank you for that. And the reason I'm asking the question is just for the benefit of everybody. Casey was kind enough. I have this dashboard that I build that looks at how much what our appropriations are, what our debt is, what our operating costs are, what our profit and loss is. And we have two enterprise funds that are on last year were negative. So if we think they're moving in that direction, I just think for the benefit of the public, we all ought to understand, where do you get the money to top off the negative? Where do you get it? And the reason I do that is not to be punitive. I just want to make sure that people understand that's how things are working here. We may need to take, to your point, we may need to take some conversations forward. It's going to be a long conversation about, do we reduce costs or do we increase revenues? It's only one of the two things you can do. And so it's not meant to get anybody in trouble. It's the way we've been operating. I just want to get clarity so that when we do budgets, we know where $300,000 of negative operating in the sewer fund and $117,000 or $127,000. So over $400,000 negative. Where does that money come from? How do we appropriate it? What budget does it come out of? That's all. And we just want to have that conversation when we do it.
So one of the things I do need to correct, sewer fund, even though in the audit reports, which is where I got the information from you, they extract the transfer of funds from general fund because that's like an inter-fund transfer. So they do not look at the money that we give them for the debt, which is, you'll have to correct me, was done by warrant article many years ago.
Yes, correct.
So the auditors or good practice is to not look at that. So they're looking at the business, and yes, so it looks like it's over by 300,000, but it's not including the 500 that we're, or 400 that we're giving, the general fund gives sewer.
One more, Linda, if I could. One more?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not trying to poke here. So in 2023, audit report, sewer fund, negative $532,160. on a revenue of $1,095,000, okay? POP, negative $117,541. Sum those two numbers. My question is, where does that money come from? I know where it comes from, but I think we all need to know where it comes from.
Well, I think she told you one of them in the sewer fund, that is money that is transferred from the general fund in. It's just not on the audit.
And then where does that money come from?
It is already calculated in our taxes because it is in the budget. All right? And that was a vote, as she said, of the voters were asked whether they were willing to pay the capital expense and bonds of the sewer fund, and the vote was yes. And we probably want to get if we can find the date of that vote. And so that's one thing. So I don't think that one's the same as what you're talking about with the POP.
It's cash. I just want to know where the cash comes from. And you're telling me it's coming out of general fund. That's good. And so when we do the budget, I would like to, just ask that we take a look-see that say we're going to designate, we're going to budget for that prospective amount of money for both POP and sewer.
For sewer, I will show you, because that is the way we budget it. It's a revenue on one side and expense on the other.
Yep.
The audit report reflects it differently because of good gap reporting.
Right.
And you are correct, as far as Pop Whalen, it is cash basis, and the general fund is covering that negative.
Yeah.
So
So my question, if I would, stands. What management actions do we take when we think we're close to going over the edge on revenues exceeding costs? That'll be for next time.
Why don't you also get to the board your dashboard?
I just got it the other day. I'm waiting for it to be, there's one last thing I just need to get cleaned up, and I will, and I'd like to, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to present it to you folks, if you wouldn't mind.
It's, board members, you want it presented to you? Sure. Okay. I will, send me an
Yeah, I will.
email.
I'll
and
send you this once I get it cleaned up.
And tell me which agenda you want it on.
Good.
Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is a request for a dumpster on town property at Mass Landing. Jim, am I passing this over to you or to?
Yep, there's a gentleman here by the name of Mr. Chase this evening to speak on behalf of a request to place a dumpster at Mass Landing. I have been in contact with the code enforcement officer. There is no requirement for any form of a demolition permit for the work that is being performed at this location. I had a brief conversation with Mr. Chase today. He will be able to speak on behalf of what he's looking to do. But what it boils down to is he's got a boardwalk, he's got a dock that he is removing, and he's got some work inside of a residence that he is doing, and he'd like to be able to place a dumpster in the Mass Landing parking lot for approximately a week, sometime in October, I believe. Mr. Chase?
Hi, thanks for hearing me. My name is John Chase. I'm not a resident, but I'm here as agent for the owners of 11 Poplar Island. I'd like to conduct some work this fall, and I'd like to have permission to put a dumpster at Mass Landing. I sent Mr. Pinio a map of where I'd like to put it. Depending on the delivery driver, they might like to put it at the spot adjacent to that because there is a tree right there in the green area, but we'd like to get the closest spot to the docks as possible, if the board would approve it.
All right. And from what I'm looking at, that area is where the Purvis pavement is. And I guess I have some questions about whether it makes more sense to put it on the others further away so that we don't put something over pervious pavement, which we want to work as drainage. So that would be one of my requests. My other request is that it go in after Columbus Day. That's when a lot of people take out boats and the lake really calms down, and that parking lot, I think, would have less use after Columbus Day. Does any other board members have any concerns or questions they'd like to ask?
That is consistent with what we did previously when there was a roofing project that took place. The location, they worked with the Director of Public Works to put the dumpster, and it was after Columbus Day.
Linda?
Yep.
Is there anything unusual for construction debris that will be going in the dumpster?
No, nothing unusual. I've already done the asbestos and lead testing on the building.
Okay, so no lead, no asbestos, it would just be regular wood, whatever.
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Pinio, if I heard you correctly, he will need to get a demolition permit?
No, he does not need a demolition permit for the work that's being performed. However, he is in constant communication with Jason, the code enforcement officer, and it's my understanding the boardwalk and the dock are state permits, not municipal permits, right?
That's
Okay.
correct.
And you have those?
I do.
Okay.
You're all set in that? Okay.
All righty. So what we're saying is that that we will give him permission to locate the dumpster on the recommendation of the Public Works Director on the best spot, and that it is after Columbus Day. Am I hearing correctly here?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Dang.
All right, I made a motion. Dave seconded the motion to permit the dumpster after Columbus Day with the Public Works Director deciding on the site. Do I have any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You have permission.
Thank you.
Sir.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a baby incubator box at the Public Safety Building. This has been put on by a member of the public, so I will let her speak to it.
Thank you. First, I'm just going to say, wow, following a dumpster approval, with my first comment being that 31 babies were placed in dumpsters found in backpacks or discarded in other dangerous locations. 22 of these infants were found deceased. Bobby Budman, Wolfeboro.
Good.
And I am here before you to hopefully get you to include a budget item on the budget as you enter budget season. It is for a piece of equipment. It is well below CIP, and it falls within the range and purview of the Select Board and of the Budget Committee and of the department heads. The quote I just gave was according to the Health Resources and Service Administration. New Hampshire has had 5 hand-to-hand surrenders. The incubator box is obviously for desperate parents. We already have a safe haven law, so a baby can be dropped in the hallway of the first responder buildings. So the only thing it would do was create a situation where someone wouldn't have to come in and leave a baby unannounced or on a floor. So the baby box that, and I know that we've spoken about this 4 times now, so this is just sort of moving this down the road a little bit. Incubator boxes are for desperate parents. We live in a district in a town where we are hosting a regional school district where we have over 500 young girls who come into this community for 182 days a year. And again, the safe haven law is there for desperate women and girls. And in desperation, we already have this law. This is not changing our law in any way. It's already there. We have being in a rural area, we have no local providers. Our hospital doesn't have a maternity ward. We don't have a neonatal unit. The closest reproductive facilities for these young girls is over an hour away. So if we could keep that in mind too. DHHS reports that our homicides are down. However, there is one group of homicides that has gone up as our homicides has gone down, and that is infants, which is a little hard-hitting. So I just want to give you some statistics. Since 1999, of course, our law started in 2004. We're a little behind, sorry. Hard-hitting. Safe haven relinquishments. Sorry. 4,524 babies have been relinquished. This is not a small number. I mean, desperate women relinquish their babies. Sadly, of that number, 1,600 were babies who were just left and walked away from. The babies that were found alive from those left and walked away were 608. Babies that were found deceased were 915. With incubator boxes being installed, there are over 200 of them already installed. 47 babies have been turned in since 2017. Nobody wants to think that's going to happen here, but there's no reason why we cannot make a provision just in case. The small amount of money that this is going to take, it's about with padding it for a 30% increase over what their current costs are, saying at the $26,500. Padding it comes to only 1.5 cents per thousand, which on a home of $350,000 is about $5.25. So I have submitted a letter from the vice chair of the budget committee asking you to add this as a budget line item. However, there are secular groups who are willing to help with raising money and there's a lot of interest in raising money. Right now, I know the Winnipesaukee chapter of DAR is thinking of being a pass-through grant place, and if there are any grants or anybody who wants to give anonymously over $2,000, I have charity fund organizations set up, but they don't want to go on record as being part of this. They will help be a pass-through to stay anonymous, to keep people anonymous. So any donations over $2,000 have a place that they can go to remain anonymous. Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to speak?
The expanded safe haven bill. I worked extensively to pass it. New Hampshire and Wolfeboro in particular would be one of the first states in the New England area to have the box. The closest area, next closest state being Pennsylvania. They're intensively distributed in Indiana where they were developed. One of the reasons we thought that this was important is because there's been an increase in drug addiction and women surrendering babies who have been abused, and this would give them an anonymous opportunity to surrender their infants without, say, handing the baby directly over to somebody. The safe haven law allows for anonymity. However, if you're looking at somebody in the eye and you're passing the baby over, they know exactly who you are, and you'll never forget that image of that person's face in your mind. My one concern with the way this is being done is that it's now being proposed as taxpayer funding, and I'm not sure how the box is going to be built. The one organization that produces these boxes, the Safe Haven Baby Box, is a 501c3, and we cannot pay them for the box. It's in the contract. We have to fundraise, and there are multiple organizations, secular and sectarian, who are more than willing to donate to this, and we should be open to all of those organizations. So I'm not sure why this is being suggested as a budget item. I think it can be done completely without taxpayer funds. The Safe Haven Baby Box organization has a $500 a year maintenance fee, and I think that that could also easily be funded by donations. I just don't know how you go through the town to set that up. But seeing as how we have the fire department being under construction right now, we have a prime opportunity to be the first in the state, the first in New England, and I think we would be moving forward quite rapidly and making a strong statement about caring the lives of our children.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience who would like to speak to this? Okay. Board members, does anybody have any questions or concerns?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Okay.
We have a letter here from the police chief, and a couple of the concerns I have that are in his letter. One is the maintenance of the box goes on as long as we have it here. Somebody has to pay $500 a year, which isn't a lot of money. Also in his letter, he states that, "I don't believe the boxes were intended for structures that are literally across the street from an emergency room at a hospital." That's one big thing I have, at least in my mind, why we should not go ahead with this particular item. That's all I have right now.
Okay, the one I was reading is third-party donations, and it doesn't say, it says any individual or organization outside of Safe Haven Baby Box, Inc. that organize, host, or an event, promote, sale, or donate drive on behalf of Safe Haven Baby Box is defined as a third-party fundraiser. Third-party fundraisers will not personally collect any donations. All donations shall be sent directly to Safe Haven Baby Box. Upon acknowledgement from the representative of the intent to the campaign for donation, the third-party fundraiser will be provided a link for online donation specific to the fundraising campaign. So based on that, I don't think that we can put it in our budget if we use the Safe Haven Baby Box. I don't know how others read that. It has to go through them, which they can do. You could do it through a third party and go through Safe Haven Baby Box, but that's what this says, that's how it would go. So I don't see that it can go into our budget. Is any other selectman? Brad?
Yeah, adding to what David said too, there's we have the initial fee, which you just talked about, of the third-party fundraising, the $15,000. Then there's an annual $500 fee, but also there's going to be has to be monitored for alarm system in there, which would typically be about $500 annually on top of that. So we're looking at $1,000 per year just to maintain and have this in service here. And I didn't see anything in here that talks about how long these last, if they become worn or damaged, whose responsibility is it to repair, upgrade, if that's going to be another expense onto the town. It just seems to be a lot of questions here for me on this one, so just wanted to put that out there also.
Any other selectmen have any questions or concerns?
The only other thing is, I remember reading somewhere that during the process of installing, raising the money for it, the location of the box is supposed to remain anonymous. Well, we all know where it's going now. So it's something that we need to consider. I'm looking for where I found that, but I did see that before. So it's something.
But if nobody knows where the box is, how can somebody put somebody in it?
It's during the process of installing and fundraising, I said. I didn't say once it's in place, we can't tell them where it is. Okay. It's during the process of fundraising, installing. It's supposed to remain anonymous where it's going to be located.
Okay, if you can find that, that would help.
Thank you.
Come on up, Katie.
It's not rocket science.
All right. Exactly.
Thank you again. The reason it has to remain confidential about the location of the box before installation is because there's an individual that has sued the organization Safe Haven Baby Box multiple times. And he even has a restraining order. He's not supposed to post on their Facebook page. And when we were having hearings at the State House, we had security alerted to look for this individual. So that's why we don't want to advertise broadly that this is going to be installed, but they're installed all over the country. They're in, like I said, they're in multiple states. So it's just for the protection of the Safe Haven Baby Box organization themselves, not for the town.
Thank you.
Oh.
We've already blown it.
So I just want to point out there are over 200 of these in fire departments, in public fire departments. And the reason why they go into public fire departments and not necessarily the hospital, because I know that's the big question, why not just have it at the hospital? The hospital is a private business. It's a private business that they can just decide not to have an emergency room anymore and not have it staffed. We as a town are staffing our fire department. We're staffing our police department. We have dispatch. The other thing, even if someone is not there, and I just want to read what it said, what 3 fire departments had on there. I quickly looked up. It says, all safe haven baby boxes are electronically monitored and are equipped to notify 911 as soon as the outer door is opened. If there is no one in the building, no worries, 911 dispatch will dispatch the closest fire or police personnel. Parents open the door, open the door to the baby box, and a silent alarm is triggered, and the call goes to dispatch. Parent places the baby in the bassinet. The sensor is located on the inside of the box, and it triggers a second call, dispatch call. Parents can push the button or simply close the door, which sets off a third alarm, and the calls the dispatch and locks the exterior door. Emergency personnel receives the baby from inside, evaluates the baby, and takes the baby to a hospital if need be. The baby necessarily wouldn't go to Huggins. Huggins doesn't have a unit to handle this. So even if Huggins received the baby would probably have an ambulance ride over to Laconia or down to Dover. So when we're talking about that, we have to look at our town's still going to stay in business, 20 years from now. So the box, David, is leased. So I think you were the one who just asked the question if something goes wrong with it. It's leased. So the company has to come out and put a new box in if it's problematic. The other question about raising the funds, the town actually can make the donation for the box. It's just the donation has to be made on the nonprofit side. So it could be a budget item. About the fundraising is we can be the fundraiser that has the funds and donates to their 501c3. They're not donating to us, we're donating to them. However, like I said, there are organizations who want to help donate to the town to cut this cost for the town.
All right, Linda?
Sure.
Claudia, you're up. I don't know this factually. It's only a supposition. But Huggins is a community hospital and enjoys some privileges as a community hospital as it relates to competition and other things. Senator Bradley led the charge on doing that. So I'm not sure they have the option, to your point or to your comment, of just simply saying, we're out of the emergency room business. Not sure they can do that, but that neither here nor there. They can get out of the OBGYN business because there was no business.
Which they did in
for them to be
2009.
in, right? Which upsets a lot of people, but they can do that. So my direct question is, has anyone sat with the president, Jeremy Roberge, at Huggins, or gone to the Huggins board and said, we'd like you to consider doing this?
So to put this in at Huggins, they have to install an alarm, which we're already retrofitted at our fire department for the alarms, and the walls open. It would be over $150,000 to put this in at the hospital.
So a $16,000 box, which is what it costs.
Yep, $1,500.
$500 a year would all of a sudden rise to over $100,000?
Because they have to rip into the wall, and they have to do the wiring, and they have to fit the alarm, and they have to have an alarm that actually ends up potentially going to our town dispatch.
So just to my direct question, so no one has or someone has spoken to the Huggins board?
No, because it's over
Okay,
100.
got
Yeah,
that.
no.
All right, so that conversation hasn't taken place.
Yep.
And I understand, someone came up with a $100,000 number. Okay, I got it. Thank you.
Board members, I guess one of the things I would like to do is I would like to have the town manager and the fire department look at where it would go, what costs it would take for us to get it in the fire department, I still have a question about putting it in the town operating budget. I'm not comfortable with that. I'd feel no problem if they ran campaigns and ran it through. I don't have any issue with that. I do think we have to have accurate figures on what the total cost is for the town itself. And there was, and I believe from the police chief, and I guess I'll ask this, are we going to have cameras around those buildings? So it will not, there is most likely there will be a camera that would see anybody putting something in this box?
That is correct.
So we'd have to look whether that meets the regulations here. I'm not quite sure that does.
I mean, it could be that you're not supposed to have it surveilled, right?
Yeah, and I think I think also it is not just a fire station, it's a fire and police station.
Correct.
And so that gives us some other issues, and I would like us to get some of the answers to that. Is there any other questions that board members would like to get answered prior to us making, or even talking about getting this in the budget or anything else? We're all comfortable with that? Okay, we'll move on.
Thanks, Bobby.
We're not saying yes, we're not saying no, we're going to collect more information.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the board to table the Energy Committee update. The presentation did not come in on time, so I will make a motion that we table the.
Second.
Okay, Linda made the motion, Paul seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the ambulance contract, Stewart's Ambulance.
So,
Jim?
as you are very well aware, we have a contract with an ambulance service. As that contract as written, we had to notify them by August 30th that we intended to renew the contract. We noticed them of such, and we were able to renegotiate the existing contract, that existing contract for 2025. We'll see a 3.7% increase over 2024. So we'll go from $750,000 to $777,000. This contract is also extendable through the December 31st, 2026. And that escalation clause is defined not to exceed greater than 4%, as outlined within paragraph 21 of the contract. And that is based on the Northeast Consumer Price Index for the Northeast region, 12-month average, not seasonally adjusted. Pretty much sums up the contract. I'm not sure if you have specific questions that you want to address with the chief.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns about the contract?
Basically the same as what we have.
Do
we need a motion?
Well, I've got a question. If do we know, and I'm just quickly reading, there are basic life support, there is advanced life support, and there is advanced life support paramedic. Are we going to have all three of those on the ambulances?
Chief, you want to speak to that?
ELS, ALS.
It's number 14. And I have something off to the side. And it's saying,
Okay, no, I'm familiar with what you're talking about. Tom Zotti, Fire Chief. First of all, this language literally is identical to the current, but what it is it goes to billing. Based on procedures that are done as part of the patient treatment, they could either be at the BLS level, the ALS1 level, or their ALS2 level. And that goes to billing billing in terms of Medicare and insurance companies and so forth. As a general statement, it's tied to the procedure. So for example, just by saying we require an advanced EMT on the ambulance doesn't mean every ambulance ride gets billed at the ALS 1 level if they don't have to perform a procedure that rises to that level. If you bill at the ALS 2 or quote paramedic level, they have to perform a paramedic level procedure, if you follow me. If that skill isn't required, you can't bill it at that level.
Even though a paramedic may be on it, if he doesn't
Correct.
appear, that's
Correct.
what this is.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That helps me.
The capacity is there, right? Chief?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or concerns? All righty, board members, can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we have the town manager sign the contract with Stewart's Ambulance through 2026 if necessary.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Dave, I have a second by Brian. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all,
No, it didn't come up, but I would like to point out that probably the primary change from current is under section 15. As you know, we're studying the whole ambulance situation in a variety of ways, but we were able to agree on language that would allow us to renegotiate this contract and the fees should the town enter into some form of municipal service before the end of the contract.
Right.
By mutual agreement, obviously, but that, if I may, is probably the biggest change from the current language.
thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Again, is there any further discussion before I call for the vote? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All righty.
All right.
That takes care of that one. Okay, next item on the agenda is New Hampshire DOT Route 28 Culvert Replacement 2025.
So the state of New Hampshire is here this evening to speak about the project on South Main Street beyond the western corner intersection. If you recall, about a year ago, that culvert failed, washed out, and they're here to give you a presentation tonight on the proposed replacement of that project, which will happen in the fall of 2025.
Good evening, Chairperson, Select Board.
Don't say anything, I can lower the lights.
Good.
How's that?
Perfect.
Very good, thank you. Well, good evening.
Thank you, Paul.
My name is Dave Smith. I'm here to present the Wolfeboro 44455 project. That's simply a state designation on the project that we'll discuss tonight. For you all, it's the Route 28 culvert replacement just to the south of the center of town here. Back on July 17th, you can see the failure that occurred with the 60-inch corrugated metal pipe due to some heavy rains that came through the whole area. And so we just want to give you folks a presentation tonight relative to our proposed improvement, background on it, the time frame, and so forth. With me tonight, I have Tim Millett. He's here, and he works in our specialty section. Tim's been the lead engineer designing the project. As well, I have with me Dylan Schmidt, who is our environmental manager. Dylan works in the Bureau of Environment, and he's been leading all the coordination with all of our outreach to our environmental groups as we progress and develop this project. So again, we're just to the south here, between Oakwood and Middleton Roads, in the dip, if you will, is where that 60-inch corrugated metal pipe exists. And we're proposing, obviously, to replace that as part of our improvements. Again, you can see on the right, we have a picture of the failure. Road was closed for a short amount of time while we were replacing and repairing that culvert. The Again, location is about 800 feet north of Oakwood and about 1,250 feet south of Middleton Road, so right in the middle in that low point. The project will be funded 80% federal funding and 20% state funding under the Emergency Repair Program. I want to also bring to your attention the lower right picture. That's a picture of the water line that crosses over the top of that corrugated metal pipe. We'll have some discussion relative to that pipe. I should say a water line that runs through there, temporary bypass, and then replacement of it with the new culvert that's put in place. So some background here. Again, we've talked relative to the emergency repairs resulting from that July 2023 event. The culvert's in poor condition, right? It's an old corrugated metal pipe. There are separated joints. There are voids that opened up above the roadway from the joints and the seepage of the sediment into the stream. It lifted the invert of that culvert and backed up and caused in essence the downstream failure of it. So it was quite catastrophic when it occurred. It happened very quickly. As part of the improvements or we will improve the overall bypass of flow as well as overall quality of water will be improved as well, I should say, through here, the quality of bypass. So Route 28 is a Tier 2 road. It's considered a minor arterial. It carries about 8,000 vehicles per day. Of course, it drops somewhat precipitously, subsequent to the tourist and traveler season. I've mentioned the water line that crosses it, and there are also some overhead utilities on call it the southbound or right side of it, of the culvert. That downstream side of the culvert that we'll talk about this evening as well. So here you can see some shots along the stream itself. On the left is the inlet side, and on the right is the outlet to give you an appreciation of what it looks like at the water level. It's a fairly consistent running stream. Here is the roadway view. Left-hand side is looking southbound. You can see the flow from left to right. And on the right side is the same or similar picture rather, looking southbound. Oh, I should say that is looking northbound, flow from right to left. So with that, let me turn to Tim. Let me give this the mic and the key fob here to Tim. Tim will get into more of the details as far as the watershed and the background on the project and progress us through the presentation.
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, members of the audience, and those online. As Dave mentioned, my name is Tim Mallett. I'm the lead designer for this culvert project.
Can you pull the mic up? Because,
okay.
Yeah, or maybe hold on to it one or the other.
Yeah, I'll hold on to it.
The acoustics are not great in here.
I never can get these quite close enough to, need to have close enough to spit on them. Yes, so for those that aren't perhaps familiar with this watershed, it has steep slopes and modest residential development. I think the watershed is largely built out for that residential development. There are some lots that are being sold, and there will be an additional impervious area from those. But it's about 737 acres, and we have this no-name stream is a tributary to Mink Brook, which is the outlet of Russ Pond, and that confluence of this unnamed stream and Mink Brook is just downstream from this culvert under Mr. DeBach's driveway. Yep, going the wrong way. There you go. So we looked at the hydrology in this watershed with a number of methods, tested, accepted methods, engineering methods for determining runoff, including USGS and federal highway regression equations. The storm that we saw last year was very intense rain over just a few hours. One of the local gauges here, or volunteer precipitation gauge, showed I think 4.9 inches in the 24-hour period, but that was all that rain fell in a much shorter time. So I would expect that this watershed would respond similarly to intense rains in the future. We have the existing culvert, if it were entirely intact and operating as it was designed, would convey about 176 cubic feet per second prior to overtopping the road. It's restricted because of its condition, so it's somewhat less than that now. But our proposed box culvert alternative is going to have substantially higher capacity prior to overtopping. We design our culverts for the 50-year, and in this case, that 351 CFS is what our target design is, and that would essentially pass through this proposed culvert rate with the water surface near the top of the box. And the 100-year we anticipate would be about 421. So that also would pass underneath the road. We have so in order to build this, we are going to use alternating one-way traffic, where we'll provide a phase 1 and a phase 2, build half the box at a time, and maintain a minimum of a 13-foot lane at least. The inverts for this will be matching the stream profile, and we will have some grade controls inside the box that I think a slide further on shows the orientation of those. And that'll help us with a low flow channel and to kind of redirect the flow to the outlet channel so that it will be more stable in that outlet as it enters back into the stream. You can see our velocities here are similar, for a little bit less with the box. So this shows phase 1, where we would be starting construction of the outlet side, and the traffic would be directed through a widening on the inlet side. There would be sheeting approximately in the center of the road to accomplish this, and the brook will be bypassed outside of essentially the excavation zone. I think this works here. So I believe a further slide shows where that is, but we would basically redirect the brook through a pipe and then bring it back in there. Whereas phase 2, we're going to move the road over to the other side, to the inlet side, and these utility poles will be relocated so that they're in compliance with clear zone and spacing from the guardrail, and there will be a little bit more room for us there. This will include barrier on both sides to confine the traffic and direct it through. We have, and as David mentioned, there's a water line here, so the water line will be bypassed with a 2-inch line probably, coming across here and then back up the slope. We've been discussing that and coordinating with Steve Randall about the logistics of that, and then as the project is completed, the 10-inch line will be reconstructed, probably insulated, but that would be, because this water line is within the right-of-way and under sufferance, that would be financed by the town. We would coordinate, or we would quantify all of the construction materials and put that in the bid, but town is responsible for the cost of reinstalling that by law. So this shows where we have the bypass and the cofferdam. This would be a combination of sheeting and sandbags. We also have water treatment areas for any of the construction runoff that would be in this area and let it run back, and then over here we would pump it up, and that's how the contractor, through their means and methods, they may come up with something slightly different than this, but we've essentially identified areas where it would be possible for them to do that, and they will be required to do that as we are in all construction projects. So I think this is more in Dylan's wheelhouse. I'm going to hand the microphone to him.
Thank you. Is it the down arrow? I think I might be a little bit shorter and might be able to make this work. All right, thank you. So we're moving on to environmental impacts and cultural resources and natural resources here. So wetland impacts are anticipated, and we're definitely going to need a permit from Department of Environmental Services and the Army Corps of Engineers for our impacts to jurisdictional wetlands. The limits of the wetlands were delineated by NHDOT staff in August of 2023. The New Hampshire Natural Heritage Bureau, or NHB, a data check report, it did not identify recorded occurrences of species in the project area, and that is simply the state level review of threatened or endangered species that are state threatened or endangered. And then the next is U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service review, which is the same except for federal species. So we identified northern long-eared bat and small-rolled begonia and monarch butterfly. And then further review with New Hampshire Fish and Game identified the unnamed stream and confluence with Mink Brook as a cold water fishery, which is known for brook trout to spawn in. Landlocked salmon, brook trout, rainbow smelt, and white sucker have been identified between the areas of Mink Brook and Lake Winnipesaukee, utilizing the stream. Municipal conservation lands are located upstream and downstream of the culvert. Tim and myself met with the Conservation Commission a couple months ago to discuss the potential impacts that we had for that. We kind of went over a similar presentation, discussed the project, just wanted to get some feedback on that. I reviewed New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. Their databases defined list of hazardous waste remediation sites. There are sites within 1,000 feet of this project area. However, through coordination and consultation with our contamination program, it was determined that there aren't anticipated impacts to any of those sites through our construction. And as well, we did a cultural resources review to determine if there was archaeological sites or above ground historic properties or features that would have been impacted by the project, and there are not. Continuing the review, two parts of our review are NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act, and then the National Historic Preservation Act. Specifically, I wanted to discuss Section 106, which is regarding consulting parties. So interested persons or organizations may request consulting party status from Federal Highway. It is a way to be a more advisory role and the ability to kind of provide feedback at a local level for projects that are going through here. I asked that if you would like to or interested in this, please contact me after the meeting. I also have pamphlets for the public and for the board members that I'm going to leave right here that anybody can grab after the meeting. So please don't hesitate to ask me more about that. And then moving on, I wanted to point out as part of our review for our natural resources that we are located in a wildlife corridor. So essentially, the road and the culvert acts as a pathway for wildlife between two prioritized habitat blocks. So something that I know Tim has considered through this design is how we can accommodate wildlife crossings, if it could be accommodated or not here. But that is something that we looked at because of this location. And this is our wetland delineations. So this is just an overlay of ordinary high water, wetland boundaries, and top of banks that are shown. And then on the right, it is the classifications of wetlands that are found there. And I'm going to turn it back to Tim to discuss the impacts to the wetlands. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dylan. These are identified temporary and permanent impact areas. So the gray hatching are what we're going to call permanent impacts, because we're going to be grading for the head walls in the inlet and outlet. And the reason we have this one over here is for the guardrail platform. When we put these new guardrails in, there will be a need to change the slope. Sorry, I see. I'll have to point the mic up a little bit here. Yeah, and so these impacts are primarily temporary. There will have to be some cutting, obviously, of trees on this outlet side especially, and that will be revegetated. The access we're envisioning would probably be through here, with hopefully the use of this area for some stockpiling. And then this dashed line is kind of how we're envisioning getting into the inlet when the traffic is coming through the other side. So these diagonal lines are essentially grade controls that allow the low channel to start over here and then switch over and come here and be more in line with the brook as it exits. Interestingly enough, in our field review here, we found these types of grade controls or baffles or in the downstream brook. There's several of them there. It's very unusual, granite blocks, and I suspect it might have something to do with prior use in the village. But anyway, this is going to match that hydraulically very well, I think. These are just the sums of these impacts. These areas essentially are classified by the wetlands. There's emerging and scrub forested wetlands. So we have, our temporary impacts are less than 10,000 square feet, and we have permanent linear impacts that are less than 200 linear feet. So no mitigation required, according to the wetland rules, and our close coordination with our sister agency. We do have to meet these proposed alternative design requirements according to 904-10, and that's part of the process on these types of designs. I do envision that this is going to be a substantial improvement to what has been out there for many years, and will be a resilient design. I'm quite confident of that. Some of these steps, as NEPA, for example, have been nearly completed. Yeah, it is completed as of a couple days ago, so waiting final signatures, I think, and yeah, that's wonderful news. We are advertising in November, and so through the GNC process, contractor approval would be in the spring. We have a timeline to prefabricate the box culvert, and so that's why we need to really stay on schedule. The cost of concrete has gone up quite a bit in recent years. It's also a factor in the size of this alternative. We hope to have this project begin construction perhaps maybe a week before Labor Day, but certainly in September, and I hope it'll be as dry as we've seen this year, because that would be wonderful too.
Your lips.
And we need to be out of the stream or we need to make every effort to be out of the stream to keep our friends at Fish and Game. You know, we're striving to do that. But the majority of the construction will be completed by November 2025, and then into the spring will be final paving and striping, which will more than likely be needed. Do any of you have any questions for any of us?
Before we go there, if I may, Ms. Clark, who represents the Conservation Commission, we had coordinated with them, as Tim and Dylan had mentioned. She's here this evening. If she would like to, I'd like to give her an opportunity to provide some insight and perspective from that group.
Thank you.
Lenore.
Hi, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. I know this isn't a public hearing, so I'll make this brief. I'm Lenore Clark with the Conservation Commission, and as Dylan mentioned, the DOT came to us a couple of months ago at this point and presented the project. So the Commission's role here is that we hold 2 conservation easements, one immediately upstream of the culvert, one immediately downstream. So they're on private land, but we hold the easement. There are specifications in the easement that do allow for the cutting of trees or the building of structures in the case to further wildlife conservation. And we're of the opinion that a box culvert like this falls within that realm. And I can say personally that just maybe a month ago, I saw a dead mink that had obviously tried to cross the road. Instead of going through it, you know, with a structure like this, that would allow these critters that run up and down the brooks, would allow it safely to get from one side to the other without having to play Frogger. I do want to note one slight concern in that the box culvert is a little bit undersized. Generally speaking, they like to see culverts slightly larger than the width of the upstream channel, and this one's just about the exact same size. However, that being said, it is definitely going to be an improvement. I believe it is going to be an improvement over what was there previously. It's hard to argue with that. And do you folks have any questions for me?
I think you probably looked at it when they put in the culvert. Am I correct that it will be below the grade of the land? So in other words, the bottom of the culvert will have...
That's the idea. It mimics exactly. It allows it to have a natural stream flow. It might be negated during high water conditions.
Okay.
But,
and
you
that...
guys could speak to that better than I could.
You answered it very, very appropriately, yes.
Okay, that's it. And my other one is where there are the temporary easements, are you going to put some kind of fabric down if you're putting material, and that you can remove that material in the fabric and it can go back? We did it on Pleasant Valley Road Bridge, and I just want to make sure you're going to do the same thing.
Yes, we will. That's a BMP that we almost always use. So we will use that here.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Yep, Paul?
Yeah, just a question. So it looks on your timeline that it's a 90-day construction at September through end of November construction period. Is this fabrication activity which precedes that, is that done on site or is that done off the site?
This will be a precast concrete sections that'll be delivered to the site.
So the clean construction is September, November.
Right.
Everything is going to be precast, brought to the site, and then constructed.
Yep,
Okay,
yep,
good.
and
Thank you. That's all I had.
Brad?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just to confirm, we're talking about the bottom of the box culvert there. I'm assuming it sounds like it's going to be enclosed bottom on that. It's not going to be an open channel bottom, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And there'll be material put in there or whatever. You know, it sounds like you're going to have it submerged a little bit so you could have a natural type stream bed sitting on top of the concrete in there.
Yes, yep. And we'll be putting that stream simulation material in between those grade controls.
The outlets,
and,
yep. Okay. And the flow going through there won't be carrying any of that material out. If we have a high flow, it won't flush it all out on us.
That's correct.
Should stay there.
Yeah, this stream has what's called aggradation at the inlet. The sand, when you get the ponding at the inlet, it settles out, and probably for about 40 to 50 feet of the channel, there's a deposition there of really finer sand. What we'll see will be in this new culvert will be something that's a little closer to, or substantially closer to how sediment transport is supposed to work in a stream. And, some of it it'll move through.
Right.
But then it'll be replaced with what's upstream. And that's just a natural sediment transport phenomena.
Okay.
The concern that Fish and Game has is that they don't want to see a lot of the sand deposits on top of the eggs during migration periods, and I think we'll be able to restore that to a large degree.
Yeah, thank you.
Steve, do you have something you'd like to say?
So I'd just like to weigh in on what our part of this is going to be. So our water main, as they have shown, is in their way of their box culvert. So we're going to have to take, when I say we, they are going to have to take out about 120 feet of our 8-inch water main at our cost. And then in the process, we are going to have to do a temp main around this construction project. So the temp main will be installed in-house. The budget for this I have and am working into our operating budget for next year, so it won't be a spike as a separate project much. But
I love that.
so it's, but I just want to clarify that the timing of this project is going to work in our benefit as well, because this line from, we're going to bypass from hydrant to hydrant. So if you are heading south, just before this culvert, there's a hydrant on the right. And what we're going to do is we're going to bypass with a 2-inch line out around via the right-hand side, up all the way to the hydrant on Oakwood, which is the last hydrant in the termination of the 8-inch main. From there, there's only one year-round resident on the water. Everybody else is seasonal that goes down Oakwood and goes down to Springfield Point. So depending on how this goes, what stages they're at, there won't be any disruption as far as water service for our customers. And then once they're done, they're going to put back 120 feet of new main in that section. We will then disconnect the temp and put everything back to.
So at some point, we'll get a price for us, our role in this.
I have it, and I can get it to you. I'm not going to say it. Just
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to know it as we take a look at the budget and we
100%.
add in
Yep.
it, so.
And it's not a crazy number, because it is, the 2-inch is, we're just going to go with black poly and barb fittings. It's a 3-month. We're going to run it right up the side of the road in the ditch line. That's nothing too drastic. The 120 feet of main has a little bit of cost to it. So depending on what their units come back with from their contractors, will really set the price. I do have a budget number that I can present.
Okay, that's all we need to know at some point, exactly what it is. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Board members, does anybody else have any comments or concerns, questions?
You gonna turn the lights on?
Anybody particularly in the audience who'd like to ask any questions on it? See, we have a bunch of staff. Well, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
I'm assuming that the town will get plans,
Yes, the town will get plans.
so
We'll
if
make sure that-
anybody wanted it, they'll be at Public Works and they could look at them.
Absolutely. We'll work through Steve. We've worked with Steve, and he's been great to work with, as has all the rest of the folks in town as well. So thank you for the opportunity. If you have any questions, I think you all do have the presentation, and my contact information is at the end, so feel free to reach out and give me a shout for any needs you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Hey, Paul.
Wait a minute.
Thanks.
All right. I am moving on. Next item on the agenda is the Public Works Operation Manager introduction and Public Works Department updates.
Okay.
Do I need to turn the lights up?
Yes, that would,
That would be good.
well, no, I think he has a
No,
presentation. You
no,
see-
it's okay because we don't have one. Well, maybe we do. I'm going to try. I don't know if it's going to broadcast or not.
It's us.
What's up?
Oh, there's Brad.
Brad's going to change.
Okay. So this is kind of hard to see for people in-house, but it'll probably be much easier for people to see remotely. we went through a process of trying to advertise and hire a Deputy Director of Public Works. As a result of that, we had 5 candidates. We interviewed the 5 candidates. From that point, we narrowed the field down to 3. When we narrowed the field down to 3, myself, Michelle, and Steve Randall had a conversation about how to evaluate the candidates, and it was determined that we would come up with an assessment center. So we came up with the assessment center. The assessment center required the individuals to perform 3 tasks. One task was to write a memo to themselves about their performance, their strengths and their weaknesses on the original interview process. The second was to develop a memo regarding the Tater and Howard report from 2020. And the third was to build a PowerPoint presentation and deliver it to a mock select board meeting. So we sent that information out. We gave them, I believe it was 2 weeks to complete that. As a result of that, 2 of the candidates submitted the documents, and the third had withdrawn. When we reviewed the documents from the 2 candidates, we scheduled a non-public meeting with the Board of Selectmen. Purpose of that meeting was to allow these individuals to come in and give a presentation like we asked many of our staff to do. So as a result of that process, we were really quite torn. And one of the things that came out of it was, and this is no offense to the 2 candidates, but we didn't feel that they had what we needed for the Deputy Director of Public Works position. However, we felt the 2 candidates had a lot of talent and had a lot of abilities that we could leverage going forward. So through conversations, we made the determination. We used to have an operations manager. We used to have a superintendent of the water department. Why don't we go ahead and put both of these individuals in an operator's position, and we would title them Operations Manager for Public Works, which would oversee Highway, Department of Public Works, Garage, Solid Waste, and Buildings and Grounds. And then we'd have an Operation Manager for Water and Sewer, which is the Water Department, which is both distribution and treatment plant, the Sewer Collections Department, and the Wastewater Treatment Plant contract. So we offered the positions to Steve Pesci as the Operations Manager for Public Works and Chris Maines as the Operations Manager for Water and Sewer. They have accepted the positions. Just to give a quick highlight, the Department of Public Works as a whole oversees 26 full-time employees, which is really level to what it was in 2019, excuse me. Under the general fund, it encompasses $3.3 million. Under the water fund, $1.6 million, and the sewer fund, $1.8 million, for a total of $8.6 million worth of budget. So this gives Steve Randall the opportunity as the Director of Public Works to be able to do some actual strategic planning and move the department forward while these gentlemen take care of the day-to-day operations within the department. I would note that we continue to advertise for a town engineer. And with that said, I'll hand it off to Steve Randall to speak on this behalf and introduce the 2 candidates. Steve?
Kind of stole all my thunder, Jim. That was everything I was going to say. So I'll keep it short. I'm going to introduce them, and then if it's okay, I'll come back up after to just do a quick little rundown of where we're at. So let's start off with Chris Maines, Operations Manager for Water and Sewer Departments. I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself, his background, and be nice.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Maines. I got a chance to meet most of you, work with some of you. I've been with the town of Wolfeboro for almost 7 years now, involved in water and sewer department, distribution side and treatment. Earned most of my licensing here. I previously worked for the town of Durham, New Hampshire in public works. I did 4.5 years down there. It's been a great experience to come on board here in the town of Wolfeboro and just continue, growing in the water and sewer department, earning more licenses, and now moving in this director operations manager position. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Welcome aboard.
And next we have Steve Pesci, who is the operations manager for Public Works.
Good evening, Steve Pesci, Operations Manager, DPW. Longtime resident of Wolfeboro, 30 plus years, working for the Highway Department for 6+ years, almost 7. I appreciate this opportunity and I look forward to working with all you guys.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay.
So on a personal note, these guys came on board September 3rd, which was their first day, which also coincided with my first day of vacation. So they walked right in that first week without me there. They did a fantastic job. As they both said, they've been here for a long time, so they know, they know the crew, they know the work. They're getting to get a little bit different point of view of maybe some of that work at this point over the last couple weeks. But they're doing a fantastic job, and this, sky's the limit for them. So I'm very much looking forward to what the future brings on that aspect. So currently where we are at, I've had a few people, as I've seen, ask if I could, as I'm here, if I could just take 5 minutes to do a quick little, montage of where we're working. Not necessarily a full in-depth quarterly money-wise, but just a kind of what we're working on. So that's what I'm going to try to do. If you've been to the dump lately, you will see we have the side of Beach Pond Road and Trotting Tack pretty well ripped up. The last August 19th rainstorm blew apart that drainage system. So it happened last year. And when we went into it last year, we went up to one of the drainage structures and we saw a 12-inch pipe, and we upsized the rest of it to 15, and we went through. Well, after this last one, we did some more investigations up the line, and we actually found that had been downsized 3 times from the original size. So instead of upsizing the culverts as they came down the hill, they actually downsized them. So we are now taking it back 900 feet to fix it one time, and one time only. So it has turned into a little bit larger than what we initially had hoped for. It was a couple weeks. It's probably going to be another couple weeks. But when it's done, we should not have to deal with that again. At the transfer station, we've had to do a little bit of scurrying. If most people probably have never been out behind the transfer station, but we have 3 semi-trailer boxes that we store all of our recyclable goods in, our plastic, our pressed board, our cardboard. Those have outlived their usefulness, and we had to do a little bit of scramble to fix those. So we're in the process of building a little containment area, and we're going to bring in shipping containers to house those from now forward. So that should be in about another week. That project will be complete. We have miscellaneous paving patches going on all over town at this point. We have 3 guys that are doing that consistently every day, whether it be washouts, road cuts, any of those things. We're hoping to get that all patched up here in the next couple weeks before we go on to our fall prep work. Water department has been doing, getting ready to do their final reads for their summer lines, as that's going to get ready to shut those down here in another month. We have flushing that is starting Monday, next week. He's already doing a great job. Flushing starting on Monday. Those notices have all been out, and the mechanics garage, those guys keeping everything running doing a great job. So that's pretty much the extent of what we are working on as we speak.
Thank you, Steve.
One more thing, I'm sorry.
Okay, yep.
Haynes Hill is, all the drainage is complete, the gravel has been overlaid, and hopefully all states will be there by the end of the month to put the base coat on that. And then everybody knows.
Yeah,
Yes,
could you just touch on the schedule of that a little bit?
So on that out there, we have an update meeting on Friday with them. You can see where they are at. They did the tie-in last night with Union Street and that valve cluster. They will be back. That's why if you didn't happen to see them working today, it's because they were out here last night, along with Chris. They started at midnight and got it put back together again by morning. So they will be back on days tomorrow, and then just going to keep continually going down the line to get that in as fast as humanly possible, because winter is coming.
Are they still on to end November 15th?
No, it won't. We're going to push. So DOT has a softish line of November 15th. What will happen with that is if it happens to snow, that's the maintenance is going to fall on us, because we can't just stop, right? So at this point, the whole main is on temp, so everybody's water is on temp. So we have to keep going. So as long as we don't hit cold weather, real cold weather, we're going to continue to go. And we have a good working dialogue with DOT, so they know as they come down to the bridge, they'll just pick up their gear. And I mean, and we pretty much take care of downtown anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not a whole lot different for us.
Okay, thank you. Any board members have any questions? Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Steve. And I'd just like to thank Chris and Steve for coming in this evening, and it feels good to be able to promote some people from within. And I think they're going to do a good job for us. They've hit CIP meetings already, and they went through the budget yesterday, which was an interesting process.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is the update on the tax deed property auction. Jim, that I think is yours.
Yeah. So if you recall, on September 7th, we had an auction in this Great Hall for 8 tax deeded properties. The auction was very well attended. I would guesstimate that there was about 75 people in this room. The auctioneer, actually, it was quite entertaining to watch. It was all done inside of an hour, and as a result, we were able to sell the 8 properties total. That information is on the town website if you want to see what the properties went for. But at the end, all of the properties together in a total was $477,750, and the individuals who are buying the properties have 45 days to close, and the properties are sold as is, where is. So it was a success to get this moved across the finish line.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Next item on the agenda is the budget review with the department head schedule. And the reason I put this on the agenda is we haven't assigned dinner. And we need to make sure we have dinner for these meetings.
Kurt Senecal goes first.
The first question I have, do we want to do dinner for the October 2nd meeting? That's a regular meeting. We're going to start a half hour early. We're just going to do welfare and agencies. What's the board's feeling on that one? Oh, don't all speak at once.
I don't think we need to have dinner that night.
Yeah.
That's kind of where I am. We never have in the past, but
Yeah.
it was on the list.
So Dave's bringing dinner that night?
No. Okay, the next one is October 3rd. I'm willing to take that one. Okay, the next one is October 9th.
Could I take that one?
Brad?
'Cause toward the end of the month, I might not be here for a couple of those, so.
Okay. October 17th.
I'll take it.
Brian? Paul?
22nd.
I'll do the
Okay.
24th.
Dave?
No, Jim.
Jim wants the 24th?
Jim?
And Dave, you want the 28th?
Sure. May not need it, huh?
No, I think you're going to need it.
Oh, is that why you signed up?
That's follow-up and revisits, and then there's also the extra meeting, and we'll have...
Coffee.
We'll have to... we won't...
leftovers.
Yeah,
We'll have that one catered.
Yes,
We'll
we'll
go
have
raid,
that
we'll go
catered.
raid the refrigerator.
All righty. That's good. All righty. Is there any other business? Hearing none. Town managers report?
So I've already covered the property auction. Hydrant flushing, again, was discussed, starting at the 23rd, so be aware if there's discoloration in your water, that is most likely the reason why, so flush it out for a while. CIP process is moving along. Just so you're aware, there has been a slight change in the form, and that change is where the departments rank their projects immediately to the right of that column. It was the committee's ranking of the projects. Through conversations with the committee, it seemed to make sense that the town manager did not have an area to be able to rank the projects, so that has been reclassified as the town manager's column to be able to rank the projects, and then there's still a ranking at the bottom for the committee. So you'll see that change. Again, this is a new form, so there's a little bit of learning that's going in conjunction with this form, but it seems to be working out okay. The 2025 budget process, I've started meeting with department heads. I'm not going to pull any punches. It's going to be a really challenging budget. It's been a rough few days with department heads already. Costs continue to go up, and maintaining that level of service is challenging. So it's been a real challenge with some of these budgets over the past week. We do anticipate being done in time to get the books printed, so you'll have them in advance. There's been a lot of discussion in the community about the fact that we are in a default budget and the fact that we are not issuing wage adjustment for full-time staff. Well, I have said consistently, if we're able to do it, I'd like to do that in the fall. And we have sat down and run the calculations. We will be issuing 3.5% wage adjustment on October 14th to full-time non-union staff as outlined within the proposed budget. That's 12 weeks of wage adjustment, and the cost of that is $18,500, and I feel very comfortable that we'll be able to absorb that within the budget. However, with that said, it does create some risk as we move into preparation for the 2025 budget, because as we move into 2025 budget, when we're preparing, we're putting those wage adjustments in. However, if in 2025 we go back to a default budget again, we have to go back to 2023 wages. So it does come with risk. Met with the budget committee on Monday night, I guess it was, and we've got another meeting coming up in October before they kick off their budgetary season. And lastly, I'd like to just introduce Chuck Sumner. Chuck is here this evening. Chuck, we spoke about at the last meeting. Chuck is a member of the CIP committee. Chuck is also a member of the Zoning Board of Adjustments, and Chuck is willing to be the liaison for the bike trails. This will give us the ability to have a go-to person to say, Chuck, can you go out and check the trails and see if there's any changes with intersection A or intersection B once we get that figured out. And he will attend the meetings of the Wolfeboro Single Track Alliance and report back out to me. And if I feel it needs to come to the Board of Selectmen, it'll do such. And Chuck's here to introduce himself.
Hey, Chuck,
I know some of you, not all of you, but just as by way of brief introduction, my folks retired here 50 years ago from Massachusetts. I bought their house 30 years ago, retired 8 years ago, and since then I've been a full-time resident here and trying to serve the town as best I can. Also been a mountain biker for 25 years, so I'm an enthusiastic biker. I've biked with some of the guys at the Wolf, who are members of the Wolfeboro Single Track. I know a couple of the people who started the organization. So I think I know both sides of both parties here, and I think I can do a good job of keeping everybody talking and communicating clearly and making sure that we don't have any misunderstandings or accidents or whatever has happened in the past. I think I can serve you well to keep things on the straight and narrow so everybody's above board and we have a good, transparent operation going forward. It's a good effort, and I think it's not a huge sport, but it is a benefit to the town. And I'd like to help.
Thanks. And I would say that's one of the big takeaways on this. Chuck actually approached me and said, I think I can help out here. This isn't something that we actually went out looking for, and it seems to be a good stopgap measure. So I'd like to thank Chuck for stepping up and being part of the community. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Yep.
And then the last thing I would like to say is we are on track, and the arena will be open on Sunday, the 22nd, this weekend. That is all I have.
Okay. Board members, we'll start with our committee reports, and this time I'll start with Brian.
Okay, so I'll let Linda explain more of the CIP, but we had a CIP meeting the 5th and the 12th. We had an MRI, meeting with MRI on at Pop Whalen. They're discussing with us the ambulance service and putting a report together for us so that we can use it as a reference when we talk about the ambulance service in town going forward. Then I had an ambulance committee meeting on the 10th, and that was the same day as the election, so I left the election for an hour for that meeting and then went back to the election for the rest of the day. We had our state DOT meeting on the 11th, and I also had a Heritage Commission meeting. I also met with the head of the Heritage Commission, Maggie Steer, this morning, and the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance to walk through the building and to have them take a look at the building and take some photographs and pictures and stuff so that they can put us on a list. The seven...
Save the seven.
Save the seven list. And then I had a milfoil meeting on the 13th. I had a budget meeting on the 16th. I had a senior lunch that I went to on the 16th. I had another ambulance committee meeting on the 17th. I had an EDC meeting the morning of the 17th at 8 a.m., and we were talking about the different events that the EDC puts on, primarily Lake Winnipesaukee Day last night, and seeing if there's other things that the EDC can do to bring in more customers for our businesses. And that's it.
Paul?
That's one busy dude. So ambulance meetings, several, as Brian has mentioned. We met with MRI. They are a consultancy that is going to give us a perspective of what an ambulance buildup should look like. And that was a good session. Yesterday, we met with the CEO of Stewart's Ambulance. A few of us did, because there was a request to get some I'd call it confidential information about their operation. So we had a very good session there. Learned a lot about ambulance items. And then we had a regular convened ambulance business with the ad hoc team. And I mentioned to Jim this morning, there's an ask coming in your direction, Jim, from the team that says, can we just ensure that MRI puts their pencils down on their report so that we can all look at it as we start down the process of trying to figure out financially what we do in 2025. I attended the police commission meeting the other evening. Things appear to be in good hands with that organization. I appreciate being able to attend. Sat in with my colleagues on a review of the town manager's appraising activity, which is something we're supposed to do, and we actually did it. Thanks to Linda for pulling us together. Participated in the election, and it was a fun thing to see here, having 1,800, roughly speaking, of our neighbors come in, and we caught up with each other. I thought that was pretty cool. As Brian mentioned, the Libby Turner is there tomorrow, Brad? Is Turner going to be visiting the building tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah, they're in there tomorrow. The purpose of their activity is to look at the physical structure of the building. Brian covered off what Maggie has been doing, which I thought was kind of good. So that's about. And yes, I attended the work session on Route 28. I thought that was it was good. I mean, the good news about Route 28 is there's a lot of data out there. We just have to encourage the public to go look it up so that we have an informed decision when that decision comes. Thank you.
Brad?
Yeah, see, last night we had a planning board meeting. We had 3 pre-application discussions there last night. Wolfeboro Community TV this morning.
Didn't need to.
We had Wolfeboro Waters.
It's their business.
Recently, last week, was it last week or the week before?
Last week.
We attended the chamber quarterly meeting last week. Obviously, Paul mentioned the elections. We were all here for that. Last week was a long day. And I also attended the auction that we had here. I thought that was very interesting to see that all come together and how that worked and everything. That was very interesting, and I agree with Jim. It was very well attended, I thought, too. So that was it for me.
It was the most entertainment I had on a Saturday morning in a long time.
Dave?
Well, I think it's been mentioned, we had a work session and then we had elections, which was a pretty long day. That's all I have.
Okay, I've attended 2 CIP committee meetings. We've just about finished all the department heads. I think we're going to have some more discussion on the form, and we should start working on the written report. I had a last night Wolfeboro meeting. Wolfeboro Waters supports the effort of DES to inform the citizens of the issues around cyanobacteria. There was some comments made by the governor, and the committee felt that DES has been extremely helpful and supportive to the committee. I attended the library trustees meeting. I also was at the primary, long day and a long next day. I was at the work session on Route 28. I went and gave my report at the Chamber's quarterly meeting. I was at the Milfoil Committee. I joined Brian not only at the Budget Committee, but also at the EDC meeting. So it's interesting. Some weeks are packed and other weeks are not as busy. Is there any public input? Come on up.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. How you doing? Bruce Marinell, Highway, Buildings and Grounds. I'm here tonight just to support Chris and Steve, but they got some challenges. We have a lot of people coming and going. And it's going to be tough because it's just a constant change. I've been here 7 years, and that's a long time. It shouldn't be. People should be here 20 years. I don't know why we're losing so many people, but we are. I just want to thank you guys. Again, we did the docks this year. We have so many people thankful for coming to, they come to Wolfeboro because we're here. It's just a great thing. I'd like to thank the police department, fire department, and they do a great job, as you people do a great job. Nobody comes up to this mic and says thank you. I watch it all the time, and thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Bruce.
Wow.
Is there any other public input? Anything on,
Press?
I'm going to go there, I jumped that. Questions from the press?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep,
Can you all hear me?
barely.
Barely.
Okay. The election accounting took a while to accomplish, and is that due to additional procedures that you're required to do? Or also were all the write-ins a factor in that?
Yes, the write-ins was a major factor. And some of the rules that we had to write down every spelling of a name. So if one had an I in a place and the another one had an E, we had to write all that down. So Brian and I had, I think, sometimes 3 pages trying to get all the spelling, and then at the end we could add them all together, but there was a combination. Any other board members want to comment on that?
It was a long night, and I think the captain, not to pick on the captain, I think the captain and Pat Waterman didn't put the pencil down until 1 o'clock in the morning. 'Cause they had to get things all prepared for the state as well as for the press. And I think we left around, 11 o'clock at night?
Yeah, just about 11.
It was a long night, a lot of write-ins, as Linda said. But it was fun to see people come and just reconnect. I thought that was great. Hopefully at the general, we won't have as many write-ins. I mean, there's only going to be a couple of choices down the ticket.
Yeah, I think the general election, it's going to be crowded. There are going
Busy.
to be lines, and it's going to be nonstop all day long. So that will be maybe not as long, but a lot more work we'll have to do. But looking forward to it.
Me too.
We only get to do that every 4 years.
Thank God.
I just wanted to add that I went around to different towns, and in Ossipee, they have these poll pads. So they have these little computer pads. So when people go in to vote, there's no longer a notebook with all the names and then a ruler and you scratch out. Someone just says to any of the clerks, because you're not separated by the alphabet, you give your name, and then they take that information in, and that information is then goes on to the next area, where they go and they get their ballot, and they were very happy. And what they said was that it was their first run with it, and they wouldn't have been able to use them in the general election unless they had a first run through. So they had their first run through, and it was really impressive. And the town moderator was very pleased too. Just a little point of information. There might be some hardware for you to buy. But thank you for all your efforts. Thank you very much. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
I need a motion to go into non-public.
Motion to go into non-public.
Paul?
Second.
I heard Brian first. Brian?
Second.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Paul? Yes.
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 Thank you. Thanks, everybody.